Welcome to another weekly episode of Shadow Space. I am your host, Laura Brown, and today I'm going to do things a bit unconventionally. For those of you who have been tuning into my podcasts previously, I like to start out by giving you guys a full disclaimer and introducing myself and my podcast and the purpose of my podcast, which I will still address later on in the show. But today is such an exciting day for me because it's officially the launch of my website, shadowspacehealing.com. And I just can't even contain my joy and my excitement for this project to finally be here. And so I wanted to start out by that. I really just want to start out by sharing, the website and what we've been doing and, really kind of let you guys in on the journey. So here we are. Today is officially the launch of my website. So please make sure to check it out. It is shadowspacehealing.com. And with that, I do want to also apologize to anybody who has previously gone to my website and hasn't seen much information, because I had my website parked on a coming soon page because we were still working through so many things on the back end and we weren't ready to go live yet. And so I just want to apologize to those of you who have visited the site and haven't seen much information there, because I know I've been sharing the website here on my podcast, but there was a reason why the website was still parked on that coming soon page. However, now if you go on there, you can see all of the content, all the information, all the resources that we're offering, all of my services, and you can certainly connect with me there as well. But, beyond that, it's just been such an incredible project for me to work on since the fall of last year. I have learned so much through this process, through this project. I was working with designers who aren't local, so that's an experience all in itself. Had some language barriers to overcome, so the website took a little bit longer than expected. Not to mention all the kinks that came along the way. My website, I think, crashed something like 3 times at this point, which was super nerve-wracking. So if anybody's out there who's ever created a website from scratch, you probably understand what that means. It was frightening, to say the least. So I feel like I've been tested and over-tested and retested so many times through this project. And I've learned again so much about myself through this whole experience, because I thought I was patient before, and my patience was certainly tested this time. Nonetheless, here we are. I am so pumped up, so excited for you guys to get to finally see this and, be able to be out here and be able to be of support to you guys on your journey. And also with that, I want to give a huge shout out to my brother, who will probably only get the shout out on my podcast because he's my younger brother and I really like to give him a hard time. But he is so amazing. He's been so incredible. He was here last week in my house. He came over and set up my entire office and turned it into a complete studio. So I feel like super official here today. I have cameras and the most amazing mic. So if you guys hear me clearly now, that's because of him. Have some sound mixers. I mean, it's just super official. And he really donated his time and all of his equipment. And I'm just beyond grateful and so fortunate to really have people like this in my life who really love me and support me every single step of the way. So, again, a huge shout out to my brother. Thank you. I love you so much. And thank you for all your support and all your help. And I really am just so thrilled to be here and to have all this cool equipment now. And hopefully you guys can get to see it soon, because I do plan on creating my video podcast shortly after this. So you guys will get to see my face very soon. And that is thanks to him. Oh my goodness. All right. So again, I wanted to do this show a little bit differently today. I don't have a specific topic per se today, but I just wanted to share the experience that I've gone through in creating this project and just what it's taught me, and really hopefully encourage all of you out there who are dreaming of creating something to also go for it, because it can be really scary and frightening to start something fresh and start something new. And for me, this concept came to me actually a year ago today. And this is why I wanted to also release and launch my website on this day, April 5th, because April 5th of 2022 is when I came up with the concept of creating shadow space. And for me, the concept is really based on my own personal experiences, all the struggles that I've had to overcome through my own healing journey, through my own self-discovery journey. As you guys know, listening to my podcast, you also know that some of the topics that I share here are inspired on based on my own personal experiences, my own personal journey. And the same is true for the website, my services, and everything that came along with creating shadow space. I think it's so incredible when sometimes you find yourself in a place of darkness, it's the best way I can describe it. And then you can kind of create something out of that. So for me, this is what shadow space symbolizes. As you guys know, I've shared bits and pieces of my experience through my podcast and the previous topics, but my healing journey began years and years ago. And you guys can also now get to read my story on my website. And at the time, I just did not know what was going on. I just knew that something was different, and I was going through a transition, through a phase, but I didn't know how to define it at the time. And, I also didn't have the resources or a place to go to even understand what was going on with me. And in part, that's why I wanted to create shadow space, because I know there's a lot of people who are on their healing journey, and we all get there differently, right? You will come to learn more as I share in my next episodes, all the different ways we can find ourselves on a healing journey. It's not always the same, right? We're all very unique, and we're all going through our own experiences, and we're all on our own individual paths. So for me, the way I look at that is that, when you are guided or you are led on a healing journey, it may come in different forms. For me, it came from a very stressful experience in my life. Again, as you guys will know, or as you guys will read on my website, it was both an exciting experience, but also a very stressful experience, which then led me to the place of starting to look and introspect within myself. But while I was going through this, I had no idea or concept of what it even meant, right? And so I just allowed myself to be guided in that space. I just allowed myself to be guided, but I didn't know how to define it, right? And so many people that I talk to also find themselves experiencing healing in that way. Sometimes it comes from a very painful experience. Other times it comes from an insight, something you may perhaps all of a sudden realize about yourself. And sometimes it comes from very challenging, difficult moments in your life, right? But all of those things serve a purpose, because it leads us on a path to discover who our true self is. And it leads us on a path to begin to inquire more about who we are and what our purpose is and what we're here for. And perhaps what are some of the challenges that we need to overcome? What's hindering us along our path, right? What visions do we have about ourselves, right? and what's standing in the way of that. And so for me, when I found myself in that space, that's where, the self-exploration kicked in, and I started to ask myself deeper questions and inquire deeper, and then go within and start to do this work. But again, the reason why I created Shadow Space really is because most people, when you find yourself on that path, you have no idea what you're being led to, because it's not quite clear yet. It's not even definable yet. You don't even know. A lot of it can sometimes translate into confusion or even more frustration. And then you find yourself in a space where you're doing things that can be actually very self-destructive to you as a result of that frustration. But all in all, it leads you on a path to begin to want better for yourself and to become a better version of yourself. And so Shadow Space was really created for that. I really wanted to be able to offer that guidance and the support to those who may find themselves in this perceived darkness alone, because that's how I felt most of the time. And, to seek that support and guidance, or at the very least to go somewhere and perhaps listen to somebody or hear someone talk about their experience and say, oh my God, this is exactly how I feel. I'm not alone. I feel this way, right? So for me, Shadow Space goes beyond offering coaching services. Of course, I do want to help others, and I do want to be able to be of support and help those and guide those who want that additional support from somebody who's experienced it. But for me, it goes beyond that. I just want people to know that you're not alone in this perceived darkness, and what we often perceive as bad is actually for our greater good, right? Because we can transmute that into something that can be of service to us, be beneficial for our overall well-being, and be beneficial for our wholeness, for our whole being. So again, this perceived darkness, I think, is often frowned upon, especially when you're going through it, or when you're in the thick of it, because there's no clear way to tell somebody, oh wow, yes, you have began your healing journey. There's no clear way of saying that, at least in my experience, because if somebody had said that to me back when I started, I would have looked at them and said, I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean healing journey? What is that? Right? So I think we come into that being in that space through our journey and our experiences that leads us to that place. But since we all take a different turn and we're all on a different trajectory, it's hard for somebody to really pinpoint that for someone and say, that's it, that's what's happening with you. But what really helped me through my journey is to really learn to tune into myself and to allow myself to feel the things I was going through. So I thought to myself, if I had maybe some support or guidance or somebody I could listen to, I would have probably identified with the shadow a lot sooner. But again, that did not exist back when I started, right? And it's ironic because when I came up with the concept a year ago to today, the shadow work wasn't even talked about often. And then when I began the project of building my website in the fall, I think shortly before that, actually, I was on TikTok and I saw a lot of stuff being flooded about the shadow work journal, and everybody was on the shadow work journals and doing their, shadow work and all that kind of stuff, which actually made me so happy because I was like, finally, right? There's something out there where people can actually begin to work on their inner selves, in their world within. On their world within, maybe that's the best way to say it. Is the right way to say it? I don't know. Um, I make up things all the time, by the way, guys. So, anyway, but I started seeing a lot of the shadow work come through, sometime last year on TikTok, and people were talking more about their shadow and working through their shadow, which is so essential and so essential and so instrumental for our growth. And so I was really excited about that. And I was like, great, this is a good starting point, because when I began my healing journey, I did not have a shadow work journal at all. In fact, you'll come to learn that meditation was something I also was led to. I didn't know meditation prior to that. Well, I kind of had heard about meditation, but wasn't really a meditator. And it was something that I was led to, guided to through my healing journey. So a lot of these things weren't available, right? But even now that they're available, I think there's still a lot of misunderstanding about it, right? Because I talk to a lot of people all the time. I'm one of those people actually that people just enjoy, I guess, talking to. I don't know, for whatever reason. So, one of those weird people where people will meet me and start telling me their entire life story within an hour, which is cool, because I love hearing people's stories. But just through my conversations with people, I've come to learn that even with all the tools that are available now, it's still somewhat challenging, because the process in itself, altogether, the healing journey, the self-discovery journey, is so personal. It is so personal. There's no two experiences alike from my perspective, because it's very personal, right? So even with the tools available, even with everything that's out there that's being shared about working through the shadow, people still find it challenging to stick with it, or to even understand it, or to begin to understand the value that comes from working through your shadow. For me, one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to talk about the shadow and do shadow work and really help guide and support people in this area of life is that I'm a firm believer that when we confront the hidden parts of ourselves, some of the things that we perceive negative, some of the things that we're not proud of, some of the things that we may even be ashamed of or feel guilty about, I think the more we confront some of those things, not only do we hurt ourselves less, but then we hurt other people less. Because once you come to understand your own perceptions, right? Your perceived weaknesses, your perceived darkness, your perceived areas that you feel that you need to hide in order to feel accepted in society or to belong, then you can begin to face yourself and see the light through that darkness. You can begin to accept yourself, and you can begin to understand why you're wired this way. What made you become this person, right? Because a lot of these things that that we're wired with, a lot of it comes from our conditioning. A lot of it comes from how we were raised, by who we were raised, the environment that we were in, right? Our experiences in life, the hurt, the pain, the trauma, the wounding, all the things we haven't dealt with, the baggage, right? All of these things. And sometimes we don't want to face that. And granted, I did not want to face that in myself either. I don't think anybody ever voluntarily wants to face it. It's a very challenging thing to work through in a person. And this is why I'm a believer that sometimes we have to be led to it through sometimes a very painful experience that leaves us no choice but to start to introspect. That leaves us no choice but to want to inquire deeper, right? And it's not always in the experiences that are unpleasant. They don't always happen for gosh, what's the word I'm looking for here? To hurt us or to harm us or to really put us down. These experiences sometimes happen for our greater good. They are in our greater benefit, but we don't realize it in the moment yet, because we're still dealing with the emotional part of it. We're dealing with the pain, we're dealing with the wounds, we're dealing with the trauma. We don't see the light in that perceived, right, darkness. I always say perceived darkness, because truly, when you start to work through your shadow, you will come to understand that it is a perceived darkness. It is not darkness in the sense that it's bad. It's more so, it's dark because there's no light in it. We don't light up these areas. We haven't brought the understanding or the level of inquiry that we need. We haven't confronted it. We haven't faced it. We haven't addressed it, right? So the darkness, for me, that's what it symbolizes. It's not that it's a bad thing. I really understand the shadow so much and love it so much now. I can't say I loved it before, but I love it so much now that I've learned to embrace it, because every time I'm faced with it, I know there is a greater learning happening and a greater takeaway from it. There's a blessing, there's a gift in it, right? But you don't get that until you start working through those layers. And so that's what inspired me to create the space, is to really be here and be of support to those who may feel lost or confused through the process, or don't even understand what is going on, or you may feel like people abandoned you or reject you because they don't understand you. They simply don't understand you or understand what you're going through. And most of us will not understand somebody who's going through this phase unless either we've been through it, or we are also arriving at that stage. And I'm a firm believer that we all arrive there at our own timing. So when somebody is explaining something, like I'll take myself for example here. If somebody had said to me back then when I started this journey that I was going through this and that I would come out the other side and create shadow space and help guide people through this journey of life, I would have probably said they're crazy, because I did not even understand what was happening in my life at all. All I felt was a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos, a lot of just uprooting, a lot of internal just uprooting. And it's also important to say that sometimes when you're working through your shadow, most of the time, right? It's all an internal thing that's happening. So when people look at you, they probably don't know what's happening, right? Because they can't see you from the inside. You feel what's going on the inside, right? And for me, when all this was transpiring in my life, all the chaos and the turmoil and just the craziness that was going on in my life at the time, I just was also putting on a good front for the world to just ensure that nobody suspected anything. Because that's the other part of it. It's like when you're going through something that is incredibly difficult, it's easy to put on a front, right? It's easy to put on a mask and not let anyone know what's going on in your life, because it's scary. If you can't define it for yourself, how else are you even going to begin to explain it to somebody else, right? And so again, this is what inspired me to create the space, because I feel like we're at a point now where we can, or at least if we have the tools and the resources, we can begin to address this openly, hopefully, and share it in a vulnerable way, which is something I am learning as well, and really give ourselves the permission to not hide behind what's going on. Although it's also important to state that with the shadow, when you're working through your shadow, solitude is a requirement. because this is the only way you can do that self-inquiry. And I think often when people talk about solitude, they refer to it in the negative context of loneliness. To me, solitude is something that I've learned to embrace and really find to be very sacred for me in order for me to work through my process. So I love my aloneness. I love my not, I wouldn't say loneliness, but I love my solitude, because this is where I do my best work. And I think that's what comes with the shadow work. It's really learning to be in the space where you can be alone and master the art of being alone so that you can allow yourself to do these deep inquiries, right? And to work through your shadow, to work through anything that is coming up for you. And it's also important to mention, allow yourself to be open through the process, because I started my journey years ago and I'm still going through it. But I've allowed myself to now navigate through it by understanding it better, learning to accept it, and also acquiring the tools and the resources whenever I can to help support me. Because let me tell you, as long as we're alive, we are going to continue to heal. To me, healing is about evolving. It's not always about, oh, now you've healed and you're done. It doesn't work that way. Gosh, I've been healing for now, I would say, over 5 years. Now, if somebody had told me that 5 years ago I'd be going through a healing journey for over 5 years, I'd probably say, get out of my face. This is crazy. It's too long. You know, I'm impatient. I want this to be over already. like anybody else, right? But I think with the shadow work, it gives you the flexibility to see yourself through, through the phases of evolution, right? You become malleable. You become somebody who's a little bit more, oh gosh, I don't want to say teachable, but same context. You become, you allow yourself to start over. You allow yourself to become a student through your own growth. So you learn and you evolve through the shadow work. And guys, I'm looking at the time and I don't have much time, but I just wanted to share this, my journey with you guys on this episode. And I also wanted to really encourage you guys to keep coming back here, tuning into my podcast, because I will be creating a lot more content now that is geared specifically toward working with the shadow, the self-discovery and healing stages, meditation and breath work, as well as trauma. So I'll be diving in more into these topics on my podcast. And also, please do visit my website. It is shadowspacehealing.com. And feel free to connect with me on all my socials. I have it linked on my page here as well as on my website. And I'm so excited to be here and finally to be able to be of service to you guys and hopefully to guide you guys along your journeys. And if nothing else, just to be here to be somebody that you can perhaps listen to and not feel like you're alone. And, hopefully also be, able to support you in whichever way you need me, right? Whether you need, some reassurance or maybe some tools or resources, or perhaps, you have questions, or you need perhaps, more guidance and support through coaching. Whatever the case might be, I'm here to help support you guys on your journey. Okay, guys? All right, I'm being told to wrap up here. So I hope to catch you guys on my next episode, which I'll have a really amazing topic to cover for you guys then. But until then, have a fantastic weekend. And I am going to go and celebrate now. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.